The 1800s were a time of profound transformation for the Native American tribes of the Great Plains, a sprawling region from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains. These tribes, such as the Sioux, Cheyenne, Comanche, and many others, had lived in harmony with the land for generations, relying on its vast resources for their survival. The bison, in particular, stood as the heartbeat of their existence, providing food, shelter, clothing, and even spiritual significance. Their connection to nature was not just practical, it was deeply spiritual. Every hunt was accompanied by rituals to honor the spirit of the animals they relied on. The people of the plains were nomadic, following the seasons and the migration of the bison herds, defining their territories by natural landmarks rather than rigid borders. However, the 19th century brought massive challenges. The relentless push of European settlers and forced relocations threatened not only their lands but also their entire way of life. Despite the encroaching dangers, these tribes fought fiercely to preserve their culture, traditions, and lands, leading to a legacy of resilience and strength that endures to this day. Today, we will journey deep into the lives, struggles, and triumphs of these remarkable communities. Their story is one of survival, adaptation, and unbreakable spirit. As we delve into their daily lives, we see that the Great Plains, with its rolling hills, towering buttes, and sprawling valleys, was more than just a home, it was a lifeline. It was here that these tribes built their villages in the spring, hunting in the summer, gathering crops in the fall, and hunting once more in the winter. Each season was a carefully orchestrated cycle of survival. The Plains tribes included groups like the Pawnee, Kiowa, Arapaho, Crow, Blackfoot, and Sioux, all of whom shared a profound connection with the land. This bond shaped their societal structures, religious beliefs, and cultural practices. For them, the bison was more than a source of food, it was a symbol of life itself. Every part of the bison was used, from its skin for clothing and shelters to its bones for tools and weapons. When the bison herds moved, so did the tribes, their lives dictated by the rhythms of the natural world. This nomadic existence was not without its difficulties. The tribes often clashed with one another over resources and territories, leading to coalitions for mutual benefit or outright war to defend their lands. Yet, within each tribe, the sense of community and family was paramount. The men were hunters and warriors, tasked with providing for their families and protecting their people. The women, meanwhile, were the caretakers of the home, responsible for preparing food, crafting clothing, and raising children. Together, they formed tight-knit communities that depended on each member's contributions. Their homes were teepees, constructed from buffalo hides and wooden poles, structures that were easy to assemble, take down, and transport as the tribes moved across the plains. Their diet, like much of their culture, centered around the bison. Once a successful hunt was completed, the meat was dried and preserved for the harsh winters or long journeys ahead, a practice that demonstrated their resourcefulness. This dried meat, known as pemmican, was a crucial food source, particularly during the colder months when hunting was more difficult. In addition to hunting, the tribes of the Great Plains engaged in limited agriculture, growing crops such as corn, beans, and squash. They also gathered wild plants and berries, supplementing their diet with what the land provided. The elders of the tribe played a special role, passing down stories of their ancestors, heroes, and creation myths to the younger generations. Through storytelling, they preserved their history and instilled a sense of identity in their children. Ceremonies and social gatherings were an essential part of life, with music and dance helping to reinforce cultural ties and celebrate their connection to the land and each other. The spiritual beliefs of the Plains tribes were as rich and diverse as their cultures. They believed that every element of nature, from animals to rivers to the sky itself, was imbued with a spirit. Wakantanka, the Great Spirit, was believed to have power over all things, and the earth was revered as the mother of all spirits. Ceremonies were held to honor the earth, sky, water, and fire, each of which played a vital role in sustaining life. Their reverence for nature is evident in their customs and practices, reflecting a harmonious relationship with the environment. Each tribe had symbols imbued with talismanic power, often displayed in their art, clothing, and ceremonies. One of the most prized symbols was the warrior's shield, decorated with paintings and feathers that represented the spirits of animals, believed to protect the owner in battle. Some individuals, known as shamans or wakans, held special roles within the tribe. These spiritual leaders were believed to have the power to heal and communicate with the spirits, guiding their people in matters of health, hunting, and spiritual well-being. Becoming a shaman was no easy task. Only those whose prayers were answered by the Great Spirit or who received a vision during a vision quest could take on this revered role. The vision quest itself was a deeply spiritual experience, undertaken when a person needed guidance or aid in their life. The individual would retreat to a secluded place, fasting and praying until a spirit being appeared in a dream or vision to offer them the help they sought. Sacred ceremonies and rituals were central to the spiritual lives of the Plains tribes. One of the most important was the sun dance, a grueling ritual that involved fasting, dancing, and experiencing visions. Though each tribe had its unique variations of the sun dance, the core elements remained the same across the Great Plains. Another significant ritual was the ghost dance, a ceremony that emerged in the late 1800s, introduced by Wovoka, a prophet of peace among the Paiute people. Wovoka's vision foretold the end of white American expansion and promised a peaceful reunion with ancestors. His teachings spread rapidly across the plains, and many tribes adopted the ghost dance as a symbol of hope and resistance. This new spiritual movement was embraced by tribes who faced increasing pressure from settlers and the U.S. government, culminating in the tragic events of Wounded Knee in 1890. As the 19th century wore on, the Plains tribes found themselves caught in a struggle for survival. The U.S. government's policies of forced relocation, encapsulated in the Indian Removal Act, sought to push Native American tribes off their ancestral lands and onto reservations. These policies, combined with the relentless expansion of railroads, towns, and farms, threatened the very existence of the Plains way of life. Tribes that had once roamed freely across the Great Plains were now confined to small patches of land, their movements restricted and their traditional way of life all but destroyed. The buffalo, which had once numbered in the millions, were hunted to the brink of extinction by settlers and the U.S. government, a deliberate strategy to weaken the Plains tribes. Yet, in the face of these overwhelming challenges, the Plains tribes did not simply fade into history. They fought, often at great cost, to protect their lands, their people, and their cultures. From the Battle of Little Bighorn, where the Sioux and Cheyenne warriors dealt a stunning defeat to General Custer's forces, to the countless smaller skirmishes and acts of resistance, the Plains tribes proved time and again that they would not go quietly. Their resilience, courage, and deep connection to the land have left an indelible mark on history. Today, the legacy of the Plains tribes lives on. Their descendants continue to honor the traditions and spiritual practices of their ancestors, keeping alive the stories, songs, and ceremonies that have been passed down through generations. The land they once roamed freely may no longer be theirs, but their spirit endures, a testament to the strength and resilience of the people of the Great Plains. The story of the Plains tribes is not just one of loss and tragedy, it is also a story of survival, adaptation, and hope. As we reflect on their history, we are reminded of the importance of preserving their culture and honoring the sacrifices they made in the face of overwhelming odds. The 1800s was an era of profound and often tragic change for the Native Americans of the Great Plains. As European settlers began to move onto the plains in search of land and resources, they brought with them a wave of conflict that would forever alter the lives of the native tribes. The arrival of the Europeans sparked clashes over the bountiful resources of the plains, leading to a violent struggle that would reshape the region's culture, economy, and social structure. Initially, the interactions between the Native Americans and the Europeans were marked by curiosity and the exchange of goods. The settlers introduced firearms, metal tools, and other items that the native tribes had never seen before. In return, the Native Americans gifted the settlers with items that symbolized their rich cultural heritage, intricate beadwork, beautifully crafted clothing, and the fruits of their labor. This mutual exchange, however, would soon give way to conflict as the settlers sought to claim the land for themselves. Historians Peter Carroll and David Noble describe the Native Americans' first encounters with the Europeans as both bewildering and symbolic of the immense changes to come. One such encounter occurred on an ordinary autumn day when the Arawak inhabitants of the Caribbean islands noticed strange ships on the horizon, much larger than their dugout canoes. As the ships drew closer, the Arawaks saw pale-skinned men aboard, gesturing oddly and dressed in strange garments. The Arawak youth hesitated on the shore, but eventually, the braver men swam toward the ships, curious to meet these newcomers. In a moment that would come to symbolize the collision of two worlds, the Europeans offered the Arawaks red-colored caps, glass beads, and other trinkets, while the Arawaks reciprocated with gifts of parrots, cotton skeins, and other items of cultural significance. Then, in an eerie foreshadowing of the violence to come, the Arawaks unknowingly grasped the Europeans' swords by the blades, cutting themselves and drawing blood. For the Arawaks and many other Native American tribes, these newcomers seemed almost otherworldly. They spoke an unintelligible language, dressed in strange clothing, and had a pale complexion unlike anything the native peoples had ever seen. When Christopher Columbus first arrived in America, he recorded that the natives believed he and his ships had come from the sky. The awe and confusion felt by the Arawaks were shared by many other native tribes as they made their first contact with Europeans. However, the arrival of these strangers soon turned from fascination to conflict as the settlers encroached on native lands. One of the most notable early encounters between Native Americans and Europeans occurred during the Lewis and Clark expedition, which was the first major exploration of the Great Plains by United States citizens. As Lewis and Clark traveled along the rivers and into the heart of the plains, they encountered numerous tribes, mapping the land and documenting its resources. Their reports made it easier for future settlers to move westward and lay claim to the land's abundance. As traders began moving into the Louisiana territories, they brought with them not only goods for exchange but also devastating diseases that ravaged the Native American population. Smallpox, measles, and other European illnesses spread rapidly through the tribes, killing thousands and weakening their ability to resist the encroaching settlers. The westward expansion of settlers accelerated in the years following the Lewis and Clark expedition. Easterners, drawn by the promise of prosperity and the untamed beauty of the Great Plains, flooded into the region. The U.S. government responded by implementing policies of removal and relocation, forcing native tribes off their ancestral lands to make way for the settlers. One of the most destructive of these policies was the Dawes Act, or the General Allotment Act of 1887. This act divided up Native American reservations into individual tracts of land, which were then given to native families and individuals. Any remaining land was considered surplus and opened up to white settlers. The Dawes Act had devastating consequences for native communities. Not only were the tribes stripped of their communal lands, but the land that was allotted to them was often far removed from their historical, cultural, and sacred sites. They were forced to abandon their traditional hunting, fishing, and gathering practices, as well as many of their cultural rituals. The loss of their land and the forced assimilation policies of the U.S. government created deep rifts within native communities, as many were forced to give up their ways of life in exchange for survival. The land that had once been their lifeline was now being used to benefit the very people who had taken it from them. The U.S. government's policy of manifest destiny justified the European settlers' expansion, framing it as their divine right to spread across the continent. However, this expansion came at a tremendous cost to the Native Americans, who were increasingly pushed out of their lands, their resources stolen, and their cultures suppressed. The tensions between the settlers and the native tribes erupted into violence on multiple occasions, leading to the Indian Wars, a series of brutal conflicts that spanned much of the 19th century. One of the most significant battles of this era was the Battle of Little Bighorn in 1876, in which a coalition of Lakota Sioux, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho warriors defeated the 7th Cavalry Regiment of the United States. The victory at Little Bighorn was a rare moment of triumph for the native tribes, but it was short-lived. In the aftermath of the battle, the U.S. government intensified its efforts to subdue the native tribes and force them onto reservations. Despite numerous treaties that were negotiated between the U.S. government and Native American tribes, most were broken or renegotiated to favor the settlers. One such treaty was the Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868, which promised the Lakota Sioux ownership of the Black Hills, a region considered sacred by the tribe. However, when gold was discovered in the Black Hills, the U.S. government violated the treaty, leading to further conflict. The betrayal of these treaties became a recurring theme in the relationship between the U.S. government and native tribes, as the settlers' hunger for land and resources continued to drive them westward. In addition to losing their land, the Native American tribes were subjected to aggressive assimilation policies designed to erase their cultures and identities. One of the most notorious aspects of this policy was the establishment of off-reservation boarding schools for Native American children. These schools, founded by figures like Richard Pratt, were designed to civilize Native children by separating them from their families and forbidding them from practicing their cultural traditions or speaking their native languages. Pratt famously described his philosophy in a speech, saying, "A great general has said that the only good Indian is a dead one. In a sense, I agree with the sentiment, but only in this: that all the Indian there is in the race should be dead. Kill the Indian in him, and save the man." The legacy of the 1800s for the Native American tribes of the Great Plains is one of tragedy, resilience, and survival. Though the Europeans' arrival forever changed their way of life, the spirit of the native peoples endured. Today, their descendants continue to honor the traditions of their ancestors, preserving the cultural practices, languages, and spiritual beliefs that have been passed down through generations. The history of the Plains tribes is a reminder of the immense challenges they faced and the courage they displayed in the face of overwhelming odds. Though they lost much during this era, their strength, wisdom, and connection to the land live on. The boarding schools established by the U.S. government were part of a systematic effort to erase the cultural and land ties of Native Americans, pushing them to assimilate into American society. By doing this, the government aimed to weaken indigenous resistance, making it easier to claim native lands for settlers migrating westward. However, despite this oppressive strategy, many Native American tribes found ways to resist, either by secretly practicing their traditions or adapting them to fit the new circumstances forced upon them. Leaders like Chief Joseph of the Nez Perce and Geronimo of the Apache became symbols of this resistance, their legacies standing as proof of the native people's determination to preserve their cultural identity. Even though the U.S. government's efforts to suppress native culture were relentless, the enduring spirit of these tribes ensured that their heritage would not be lost. As we reflect on the legacy of this period, it's clear that the Native American tribes of the Great Plains have demonstrated remarkable resilience in the face of overwhelming adversity. The hardships they endured, from forced relocations to the systematic suppression of their cultural practices, could have erased their way of life. Yet, these tribes have managed to not only survive but also maintain and pass down their languages, customs, and spiritual beliefs through generations. Their survival is not just a story of endurance but also one of revival. Over the years, Native American communities have worked tirelessly to reclaim and celebrate their cultural heritage. Efforts like language preservation programs, the reintroduction of traditional ceremonies, and teaching ancestral knowledge to younger generations have reignited a powerful movement toward cultural revival. Through powwows, festivals, and other cultural events, these tribes proudly showcase their rich traditions. In modern times, Native American communities still face significant challenges, including issues related to economic development, land rights, healthcare disparities, and cultural preservation. However, they are actively addressing these problems through legal action, community programs, and advocacy. Many tribes have found success in creating tribal businesses, including casinos, which provide crucial revenue for their communities. These ventures are not just about economic survival but also about empowering Native people to take control of their futures. Educational programs and scholarships have become key initiatives in preparing the next generation of Native American leaders. These efforts ensure that Native youths are equipped to preserve their heritage while also thriving in the modern world. Prominent Native American figures, such as political leaders, artists, and activists, have played a vital role in bringing attention to the issues facing their communities. For instance, Deb Haaland, the first Native American U.S. Cabinet Secretary, has worked tirelessly to raise awareness about Native issues. Lauren Gooday, an award-winning artist, started her career at a young age and has become renowned for blending traditional Native art with modern elements. Her work has been showcased in prestigious venues, including the Autry American Indian Arts Marketplace. Another influential figure, Kay Walkingstick, a Cherokee artist, is celebrated for incorporating uniquely Native elements into her paintings, creating art that speaks to both tradition and modernity. In the world of fashion and activism, Figures like Quanah Chasing Horse have gained widespread recognition. A model and activist with Lakota and Navajo ancestry, she uses her platform to advocate for Native sovereignty and sustainability. Her stunning appearance at the 2022 Met Gala, where she combined contemporary fashion with intricate Native jewelry and headpieces, drew attention to her cause. Similarly, Jason Momoa, a popular actor, has consistently spoken out about his Native heritage. Proud of his Native Hawaiian and Pawnee roots, Momoa has been deeply involved in environmental activism, including his role in protesting the development of Mauna Kea, Hawaii's tallest mountain, which holds significant cultural importance for Native Hawaiians. The enduring strength of the Plains tribes is a testament to their ability to navigate the complex challenges of the modern world while maintaining a strong sense of community and cultural identity. They continue to take the preservation of their traditions seriously, recognizing that these cultural practices foster a sense of belonging and continuity. In doing so, they create a foundation upon which future generations can build, even as they face the uncertainties of the modern world. Looking to the future, the Native American tribes of the Great Plains are focused on creating sustainable and prosperous communities that blend traditional knowledge with modern innovations. They are charting a path forward that honors their rich heritage while embracing new opportunities for growth and development. By combining the wisdom of their ancestors with the tools of modern civilization, these tribes are ensuring that their culture not only survives but thrives in the years to come. Their legacy is one of resilience, adaptation, and hope for a future where they can continue to thrive both as individuals and as a community. And with that, we conclude today's episode. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the rich history and culture of the Native American tribes of the Great Plains. We hope you found it informative and inspiring. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you'll be the first to know when we release new content. See you in the next episode.